A Dance with Dragons follows the story of 18 different characters, and is part 2 of the manuscript is shared with Feast for Crows. Daenerys Targaryen now has 3 dragons, and has a hard time ruling as the Queen of Meereen as she's surrounded by her enemies. Tyrion Lannister is fleeing Westeros and is on his way to find Daenerys. Winter is coming. Jon Snow, as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, faces human and inhuman enemies. And the Lannisters see their stories continue as well. Like Feast for Crows, Dance with Dragons shares a lot of the same strengths and flaws. The best storylines are those that involve Jon Snow and Theon. Chapter 46, A Ghost of Winterfell, which was about a murder mystery taking place in the castle, was one of the best chapters in the book. Daenerys' side stories in Meereen was an interesting diversion from her usual quest for power. She learned that ruling was not easy, and had to deal with day-to-day issues of governance and even quell a rebellion. Watching Daenerys struggle with these conflicts furthers her development, and humanizes her character. Arya's story remains interesting as she's now training with the Faceless Men, which was depicted in the HBO series. And for the first time, Bran's chapters were really interesting, as they changed the tone of the story. The world of Westeros is very light on fantasy, and much more grounded than most in the genre. George R. R. Martin uses Bran's storyline to insert far stronger mystical and fantasy elements, like the Three-Eyed Crow, Cold Hands, and Children of the Forest. Another addition is the mysterious Young Griff. This character provides information about Westeros' back history and lore. The Martell storyline in Dorne with the Sand Snakes improved. However, the Greyjoy storyline remains the weak link, and just like the show, George R. R. Martin's favorite character Tyrion gets degraded and less interesting. Tyrion suffers from depression, and becomes an even more sarcastic shell of his old self. Also, his adventures and character arc are no longer as absorbing as they were in previous books, due to the repetitions of old tropes. It comes to me that George R. R. Martin is running low on ideas, and this even affects his top characters. A Dance with Dragons was part 2 of the same manuscript as Feast for Crows, as it retains many of the same strengths and weaknesses. Neither book reaches the perfection of A Game of Thrones and The Clash of Kings. In Dance, a lot of filler events and side stories get too much coverage, which takes away from moving the main story forward. There's too much focus on less interesting side characters, and there's too much space dedicated to the description of foods and eating. The overuse of old Game of Thrones tropes continues, and in absence of high-quality ideas, George R. R. Martin resorts too much to inserting vulgar events for shock value. While they were effective the first time, the more times he reuses the old tropes, the less impactful they are. Situations and concepts should be unique to various characters, and not reused more than once. The quality of writing for Dance with Dragons is also inconsistent. About half of the book is good, and the other half needs serious editing. The middle part of the story is weaker than the beginning and ending. The strongest parts being Daenerys Targaryen, Stannis, and Jon Snow parts at the start. Afterwards, the pacing really suffers and slows down the narrative progression to the point where it can get boring. It is only until the final quarter of the story where things start picking up again. A Dance with Dragons continues with a deeply pessimistic outlook on life. In terms of themes and philosophical content, there are some good interesting points, but like Feast for Crows, George R. R. Martin repeats himself here. The nihilism is all very familiar at this point. The story ends with the characters repositioning themselves for events yet to come in Winds of Winter. Overall, I think George R. R. Martin dropped the ball with both Feast and Dance. I'm disappointed, and I give Dance with Dragons a 3.5 out of 5. The way the books and show ended, and how George R. R. Martin endlessly delayed Winds of Winter, took away a lot of my interest in the Song of Ice and Fire. I'm not fascinated by a saga anymore, but if Winds of Winter and The Dream for Spring manage to defy expectations and really deliver on what's been set up, then it would be an incredible final act of the story. Thanks so much for watching. Please help out this channel by liking, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell. Comment below on what you think about Game of Thrones and George R. R. Martin.